"You sure you want to try, sweetheart? That rifle kicks pretty hard." The laughter rippled down the firing range, not cruel exactly, but certain. 20 U.S. Navy SEALs stood under the California sun, confident, relaxed, watching two Army women step forward into their domain. The air shimmered above the concrete, thick with heat and ego. The sound of the mocking voice faded into the wind, replaced by the low metallic hum of rifles resting on their bipods. Commander Garrett Stone folded his arms, every line of his body radiating casual superiority. 2 decades in uniform had carved his face into something like sandstone, weathered, unmoved. He'd seen arrogance before, but never in his house, not from them. Across the range, Captain Olivia Brennan stood still. Composed, motionless as the flag at half-mast on the hill. Beside her, Lieutenant Priya Desai adjusted her notepad, dark eyes flicking over the targets. Reading the wind flags the way a pilot reads the sky. They said nothing. They didn't have to. It was 900 hours at Fort Crescent, home to the Navy's Advanced Marksmanship Unit. The California heat was already brutal, the kind that melted resolve and warped confidence. Dust curled in faint ribbons along the edge of the firing platforms. The smell of gun oil and sun-baked steel filled the air. 20 Barrett MRAD rifles gleamed in the light, .338 Lapua Magnums, the pride of modern precision warfare. Beside each one stood a SEAL, battle-hardened, disciplined, trained to kill from distances most people couldn't even comprehend. Commander Stone's voice carried easily across the range. "Appreciate you making the trip out, Captain. Lieutenant," he said, his tone polite but edged. "Admiral Thornton told us to give you full access, not something we usually offer to observers." Olivia nodded with crisp professionalism, her voice even. "We're grateful for the opportunity, Commander. The Admiral spoke highly of your team's precision work." As she should. Stone's smile didn't reach his eyes. These men represent 15 years of advanced training on average. Several have been downrange more times than they can count. When it comes to precision shooting under combat conditions, there's simply no comparison. No comparison. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Priya's expression never changed, but her eyes kept moving. The wind flags, the heat distortion, the slight shimmer of mirage over the long-distance targets. Her mind was already calculating wind drift, thermal lift, range deviation, a silent symphony of math and instinct. Behind Stone, Chief Petty Officer Blake Sutherland leaned closer, smirking. "Think the Army sent their poster girls to see how the real shooters do it?" Stone's mouth twitched. "Probably. Integration initiative, diversity report, let them watch, maybe they'll take notes." Neither man noticed the faint tightening in Olivia's jaw, or the pause in Priya's pen as it scribbled down data that would later prove prophetic. The demonstration began. The first SEAL stepped forward, Petty Officer First Class Andre Washington, steady, confident. He dropped behind his Barrett, aligned his scope, and fired. The sharp report cracked through the still air, echoing off the canyon walls. "Hit," confirmed the range officer over the intercom. 1,200 meters, 2 inches left of center. Washington adjusted, fired again. 1,800 meters, center mass. The final shot, 2,400 meters, missed wide, swallowed by heat haze and crosswind. He exhaled, resafed his weapon, stepped back. A solid run. Professional, controlled. No one mocked him, no one needed to. He'd done what most couldn't. One by one, the rest followed. 20 elite operators. 20 reminders of why the Navy called themselves the best. At 1,200 meters, nearly all of them hit clean. At 1,800, fewer, maybe half. At 2,400, none. When the last shot faded, Stone turned toward the 2 women seated in the observation shelter. His shadow stretched long across the concrete. "Learning anything useful?" he asked, letting the silence stretch. The tone was polite, the eyes were not. Olivia looked up, face unreadable. "Your team shows excellent fundamentals, Commander. The 1,800-meter groupings were particularly tight, given the crosswinds." "We train in worse," Stone replied, folding his arms. "Though I notice you didn't mention the 2,400-meter target." "That's a difficult shot," Olivia acknowledged evenly. "Nearly impossible today with the thermal distortion." "Exactly," Stone said, his smirk returning. "But I suppose from the observation area it doesn't look that challenging. Care to give it a try, or would you rather stay where it's safe?" The range went silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her. 20 smirks waiting to be justified. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Olivia stood, slow and deliberate. "I'll give it a try," she said. She turned to Ramirez, the range officer. "As long as I can use the same setup your team used." A low ripple of amusement ran through the men. Sutherland muttered something about making a highlight reel out of this. Someone else laughed quietly. Priya followed Olivia to the firing line, setting her equipment bag down beside the designated Barrett. Her movements were calm, meticulous. She didn't speak, didn't need to. Ramirez adjusted the bench and handed over the rifle. Olivia took it without hesitation, checked the chamber, the bolt, the bipod, every motion precise, ingrained, ritualistic. "Safety on the left side, ma'am," said one of the younger SEALs, trying not to grin. "Red means ready to fire." Olivia didn't even look up. "Appreciate it," she said. "Same setup as the M24 I qualified on at Quantico, or the M110 I used during Operation Crimson Dagger." The silence that followed was sudden and heavy. The smirk on Sutherland's face faltered. Even Stone's expression froze. Crimson Dagger wasn't a phrase you dropped casually. It was Black Book history, a classified joint op whispered about in training halls. The kind of mission no one admitted existed. Priya crouched beside her, sliding out a small rangefinder. Not a military-issued one, custom, stripped, hand-modified. She adjusted it with surgical precision, whispering wind calls low enough that only Olivia could hear. "Anytime you're ready, Captain," Stone said, folding his arms again. Olivia didn't respond. She was already gone, mentally somewhere else. The heat faded. The noise disappeared. All that remained was the rhythm of her breathing and the distant shimmer of 3 steel targets glinting like ghosts in the light. Her fingers settled on the trigger. The rifle cracked. The sound hit like thunder. A long pause, then Ramirez's voice broke the silence. "Hit 1,200 meters, center mass." A faint murmur rippled through the SEALs. Stone's smile tightened but didn't break. "Solid shot," he said. "Let's see if you can repeat it." Olivia adjusted, barely a flicker of movement. Her second shot came faster, cleaner. 1,800 meters, dead center, Ramirez confirmed. Now the murmuring turned uneasy. Confusion replacing arrogance. Sutherland leaned closer to Stone. "That's not possible, sir. She's shooting tighter groups than half our team." Stone said nothing, his jaw flexed once. Olivia's final adjustment took longer. 2,400 meters, the impossible shot. The heat shimmered so violently, it looked like the air was boiling. She exhaled, breath slow. 1 heartbeat, 2. She fired. 3 seconds of silence. Then Ramirez's voice cracked through the speakers, this time with disbelief. "Hit 2,400 meters, center mass." No one moved. No one spoke. It felt like the temperature jumped 10 degrees in an instant. Stone stared at the target feed, waiting for an error message, a glitch, anything. "Check it again," he ordered. Ramirez reran the diagnostics, voice shaking. "Confirmed, Commander. 3 hits, 3 centermass impacts, no anomalies. Olivia stood slowly, removed her ear protection. Her movements were quiet, controlled. To her, it wasn't victory, it was simply performance. A job done right. Priya glanced at her once, an unspoken signal passing between them. Then she stepped forward. My turn, if the commander doesn't mind. Stone blinked. You both shoot like that. Only one way to find out, Priya said, tone light but eyes sharp as glass. She took Olivia's place. Same weapon, same wind, same silence. Her hands moved differently, more analytical, less instinctive, adjusting by millimeters. Her first shot hit. Second hit. Third hit. 6 shots between them. 6 hits. Every target that had beaten 20 SEALs that morning, cleanly destroyed in under 5 minutes. This is impossible, muttered Hayes, the youngest in the group. Was it just luck? Olivia turned toward him, calm, cold. No, she said quietly. It was training, repetition, experience, a lot of both. Someone asked where they'd trained. Before she could answer, a new voice came from behind the observation deck. I believe I can answer that, Senior Chief. Every head turned. A man in a JSOC uniform walked forward, his silver eagles gleaming in the sun, Colonel Thomas Kirkland, Joint Special Operations Command. His presence changed the air itself. Stone stiffened. Sir, we weren't expecting. That was intentional, Kirkland interrupted, not unkindly. Sometimes the best evaluations happen when people don't know they're being evaluated. A ripple of unease moved through the SEALs. Stone's confident posture cracked. Sir, if I may. You may not, Kirkland said evenly. He turned to the group. Show of hands, who here has heard of Operation Nightfall, Copper Valley, the Phantom Pair? A few uncertain glances. 2 raised hands. Callahan and Washington. I've heard stories, Callahan said slowly. A 2-person sniper team worked Black Ops, Afghanistan, denied areas, took out targets no one else could, but I thought those were just legends. Not legends, Kirkland said flatly. Documented reality, though most of the documentation is highly classified. He turned to Olivia and Priya. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce Captain Olivia Brennan and Lieutenant Priya Desai, the operators from those missions. The range fell utterly silent. These 2 have completed 17 confirmed high-value eliminations, 9 hostage recoveries, and developed tactical methods that are now being integrated into special operations doctrine across every branch of the U.S. military. Stone's throat worked once, no sound coming out. The same men who had laughed that morning now stood motionless, staring at the 2 women they had mocked, now revealed as living legends. Kirkland continued, his tone quiet but firm. They weren't sent here to observe your demonstration, Commander. You and your team were sent here to be evaluated by them. The words hit harder than any rifle recoil. Stone's breath caught. Every exchange of the morning replayed in his head, the dismissive tone, the patronizing smirk, the laughter. All of it now looked different, smaller, shameful. Kirkland let the silence hang, then added softly, if you'd known who they were, your behavior would have been different. But it shouldn't have been. Their value, their capability, their professionalism, none of that changes because you recognize it. No one spoke. The sun glared down. The air shimmered again, but this time the heat came from something else entirely. And as Kirkland's words settled into the dust and silence of the range, a truth took shape in the minds of every SEAL present. They hadn't just witnessed skill. They witnessed something rarer, dignity without performance. And in that moment, even Commander Garrett Stone, proud, scarred, unflinching, felt something new twist inside him. Respect. Unearned but demanded. The kind that could only be answered one way. By showing up tomorrow ready to learn. He didn't sleep that night. Commander Garrett Stone sat alone in his office long after the sun fell, the range lights outside throwing sharp shadows through the blinds. The reports were spread out before him, training metrics, qualification scores, operational summaries, the numbers that defined his career. But none of it mattered now. Not after what he'd seen. 3 perfect shots. Then 3 more. All from 2 women his team had laughed at over coffee that morning. He'd seen men break records, seen impossible shots made by veterans with decades of field work. But this was something else. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above him. He could still hear Colonel Kirkland's voice echoing through the range. You weren't being observed. You were being evaluated. Humiliation burned somewhere deep in his chest. Not because they'd beaten him. Because they'd done it with grace, without swagger, without the need to prove anything. Pride, he realized, could be an invisible weapon, one that killed learning faster than bullets killed men. At 200 hours, he closed the files. Tomorrow, he'd face them again, not as opponents but as students. The morning came sharp and bright, the California sun already cutting through the early haze. The heat would build fast, but not as fast as the tension inside the command building at Fort Crescent. By 800, the range was reset, this time not for demonstration but for instruction. The Navy SEALs arrived early, though few spoke. The air was thick with something unspoken, part curiosity, part embarrassment, part anticipation. Then Olivia Brennan arrived. No fanfare, no entourage, just presence. She moved with quiet certainty, clipboard tucked under one arm, eyes scanning the setup. Beside her, Priya Desai carried a small case filled with gear that didn't look like any standard-issue military equipment. Stripped-down optics, notebooks, range indicators made of weathered thread and wood. When they walked across the range, conversation stopped. Stone met them halfway. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then he extended his hand. Captain, Lieutenant. His voice was even, deliberate. Thank you for coming early. Olivia took his hand. Her grip was firm but not confrontational. Of course, Commander. We'll need to coordinate on range modifications before the full training cycle begins. Stone nodded. Understood. My team is ready for whatever you require. He hesitated, a flicker of discomfort crossing his expression. And I owe you both an apology. Yesterday was unprofessional. My assumptions were wrong. Olivia held his gaze. Apologies were rare currency in their world. Apology accepted, she said simply. What matters isn't where we started, it's where we go from here. A pause, then Stone exhaled slowly. Fair enough. He meant it, she knew he did. By mid-morning, they were all assembled under the training canopy. 20 SEALs, 2 instructors. The same field but a different world. Olivia stepped forward. Her tone was measured, part teacher, part operator, part quiet philosopher. Before we begin, she said, I want to make something clear. She let the silence stretch, the kind that demanded attention. This isn't about proving the Army is better than the Navy, or that women can outperform men. None of that matters in the field. What matters is adaptability, how quickly you can evolve when everything you depend on stops working. Her gray eyes moved across the group. You've been trained to be lethal in every condition, but there's one scenario most training overlooks: when everything fails, when batteries die, when comms go dark, when every advantage disappears and all you have left are your senses, your instincts, and the person beside you. She paused, letting the words sink in. That's what we're going to train for. Somewhere in the back, Hayes shifted uncomfortably. He was young, sharp, proud, and looked like he had something to prove. Priya caught it instantly. She stepped up beside Olivia, her presence quieter but her words sharper. We're not teaching tricks. We're teaching survival. These methods aren't theoretical. They come from situations where we didn't have the luxury of equipment or the luxury of backup. She opened the case on the table. Inside were strange tools, bits of string with colored ribbons, hand-marked weather meters, a small bubble level mounted on wood. "This," she said, lifting one of them, "is a wind indicator. Handmade, no electronics, no readout, but it will tell you everything you need to know if you know what to look for." Sutherland frowned. "With respect, Lieutenant, we've been using digital anemometers for years. These look like something from a survival camp." "Exactly," Priya said. "Digital systems fail. These don't. The question is which is easier, it's which will still work when nothing else does." There was a beat of silence, then quiet laughter from someone near the back. Hayes again. "So you're saying the future of special operations is strings and sticks?" Olivia looked at him, expression unreadable. "The future," she said softly, "is whoever walks out alive when the batteries die." That shut him up. The first lesson wasn't about shooting at all. It was about seeing. Each SEAL was assigned to a station on the range. One for wind reading, one for thermal mirage, one for acoustic awareness. No scopes, no targets, just observation. For 4 hours they were told to watch the landscape. The way dust moved across the ground, the shimmer of heat above the sand, the faint sound of leaves in the distance. At first they were restless. They'd come expecting action. Instead, they were told to listen. To wait. To notice things most people ignored. Washington, the quietest of the SEALs, was the first to find rhythm in the exercise. He started taking notes. Small, precise, thoughtful, the way he always worked. Callahan followed, methodical, disciplined, his years of experience showing in every movement. But not everyone adapted so easily. By late morning, Chief Sutherland finally broke. He stood, brushing the dust from his uniform, frustration flashing across his face. "Ma'am, with respect, we're trained snipers with thousands of hours behind the trigger. Spending half the day staring at mirage and dirt feels like regression, not progress." Olivia met his eyes calmly. She'd been waiting for that moment. "Chief, come with me," she said. They walked to the far end of the range, a quieter section. 3 steel targets waited, half hidden by uneven terrain and glare. "Take your best shot," Olivia said. "Any of them, use your normal setup." Sutherland knelt, settled behind his rifle and fired. The first 2 were solid hits, the third wide by nearly a foot. Olivia said nothing. She handed him another rifle, no scope, no electronics. "Now again." He frowned. "With iron sights, that's not realistic for precision." "Humor me." He did 3 shots, 3 misses. His jaw clenched. "Told you, not feasible." Olivia lay down beside him, took the same rifle. No scope, no digital readout, just metal, heat, and distance. "The wind's coming from left to right, 7 miles an hour," she murmured. "Thermal mirage says there's a false right drift, ignore it. Terrain dips twice between here and target 3. Range, 680, 920, 1150. She fired once, twice, 3 times. All 3 hit center mass. The clangs came back delayed, but undeniable. Sutherland just stared. "Technology amplifies skill," Olivia said quietly. "But it also blinds you to what your body already knows how to do. You don't see the wind anymore, you wait for the sensor to tell you. You don't feel the shift in air pressure, you look for a number. Take the numbers away and your capability collapses." He swallowed, shame and respect fighting for space in his voice. "So this morning's exercise wasn't busy work," she finished for him. "It was the foundation." He nodded slowly. It wasn't easy for a SEAL chief to admit when he was wrong, but he didn't need to. The silence between them said enough. When they returned to the main range, Sutherland's posture had changed. The skepticism was gone. He didn't say what happened, he didn't need to. but Stone saw it in his eyes. Something had shifted. By afternoon, the tone of the entire unit began to change. The men moved slower but with purpose. They started asking questions instead of offering objections. The heat still pressed down like a weight, but now it felt earned. The sweat meant something. During a brief water break, Stone pulled Sutherland aside. "What happened out there?" Sutherland shook his head, still processing. "She shot 1150 meters with iron sights. Center mass. I watched it." Stone blinked. "Iron sights, that's—" "Yeah," Sutherland interrupted. "That's what I said." Stone didn't reply. He just nodded once and looked out toward Olivia, who was adjusting the range flags again. For the first time, he wasn't sure if he was watching a soldier or something closer to a storm. At 1600 hours, the first day of training ended. The SEALs gathered inside the small classroom beside the range, exhausted, not physically, mentally. Their brains were rewired, their assumptions dismantled. Priya stood by the whiteboard drawing a rough diagram of a canyon. Today's lesson was frustration. That was intentional. Most of you are used to immediate feedback: shoot, adjust, improve. This methodology doesn't work that way. You're learning to perceive before you act. Washington raised a hand. "How long did it take you to develop these methods to operational standard?" Olivia glanced at Priya, then back at the room. "Years, and the hard way. Every technique we'll show you was born out of necessity, refined through trial, error, and near death. You'll get the distilled version without the casualties." Hayes smirked, comforting. Priya's tone didn't change. "It's not supposed to be comforting, it's supposed to keep you alive." A few quiet chuckles. Even Stone smiled slightly. When the debrief ended and the men filed out, Brooks lingered, the quiet, analytical one, always thinking 3 steps ahead. He waited until the others were gone. "Ma'am," he said, hesitating, "permission to ask something direct." Olivia turned. "Go ahead." "How much of this program is tactical and how much is political? I mean, no disrespect, but are we doing this because it works or because someone upstairs wants to prove a point?" Olivia didn't flinch. She'd heard worse. "Fair question," she said. "Politics may have created the opportunity for this program, but politics can't fake results. What we're teaching you doesn't care about gender or service branch. It either works or it doesn't." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a softer, steadier rhythm. "When your tech fails, when the world goes dark, when you're alone and everything depends on your next shot, that's when this training matters. You'll either make it or you won't. That's not political. That's survival." Brooks nodded slowly. "Understood, ma'am." "Good," Olivia said. "Then let's see how many of you can survive tomorrow." That night the base lights dimmed early. Stone sat in his quarters, polishing his rifle in silence. Sutherland wrote notes on wind behavior. Washington read the environmental guide Priya had distributed. Even Hayes, loud, restless Hayes, replayed the morning's words in his head. "The future is whoever walks out alive when the batteries die." Across the hall, Olivia and Priya sat in their temporary office, cross-checking data on their tablets. "They're starting to get it," Priya said. "Some faster than others," Olivia replied. "Stone's learning curve surprised me. He's stubborn but not blind." "He's a professional," Olivia said. "Once pride burns off, what's left is discipline." Priya smiled faintly. "You always find the hope in people." "And you always assume the worst," Olivia countered, smirking. "That's why it works." Outside, the range was quiet, just the sound of wind brushing over sand and steel. Tomorrow would test them harder. And for the first time in years, Olivia felt something she hadn't on any battlefield. Hope. Not for herself, but for them. The wind came early that morning, hard, unpredictable, like a living thing. At 700 hours, the training field was already alive with dust devils spinning off the ridgelines. The range flags whipped back and forth, changing direction every few seconds. It was the kind of day no sniper wanted. And that was exactly why Olivia Brennan chose it. She stood at the far end of the line, the horizon stretching endlessly in every direction, a pale desert bleeding into a blue, merciless sky. The SEALs were still setting up, adjusting optics, muttering under their breath as the gusts rattled their scopes and tossed sand into their magazines. "This is impossible," Hayes complained, squinting through his scope. "Winds shifting every 10 seconds. Olivia didn't turn. "You're right," she said. "It's impossible if you're trying to fight the environment instead of reading it." Hayes looked up, frowning. "How do you read chaos?" "You don't," she said quietly. "You listen to it." Priya walked past them, her hair tied back in a tight braid, her notepad tucked under her arm. She stopped near a small patch of waving grass and dropped one of her handmade indicators into the ground. The ribbons fluttered wildly, left, right, then suddenly downward. "See that?" she said, pointing. "Micro downwind collapse. Happens when a gust hits a hot surface and rebounds upward. That means your bullet will rise for the first 50 yards, then drop faster than you expect. Compensate for that, and the chaos stops being chaos." Stone crouched nearby, watching closely. "And you figured that out how?" Priya's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. "By missing a lot of shots I couldn't afford to miss." The day's exercise was simple on paper. 6 target, 6 distances. 1 minute between each shot. But each target was placed in a different wind corridor, invisible to the naked eye. Cross currents, downdrafts, heat distortion. Each one would play tricks on the bullet's path. The SEALs would shoot first. Then Olivia and Priya. No coaching, no corrections. Olivia wanted them to feel the error before she explained it. "Remember," she said, walking the line, "don't chase the bullet, anticipate it. Every miss tells you something if you're willing to listen." Washington nodded. "Copy that, ma'am." He was calm, steady. Hayes wasn't. He muttered under his breath, already tense, jaw clenched. "Range is hot," shouted the control officer. The first volley went out, 20 rifles firing in near-perfect unison. The sound rolled across the valley like thunder. Dust plumes erupted along the distant targets. Only a few hits. "Target 1, 7 confirmed," Ramirez called from the observation post. "Target 2, 3. Target 3, 1. Targets 4 through 6, 0. A murmur rippled through the line. Stone blew out a slow breath. "Damn wind's chewing us up." Olivia waited until silence fell again. Then she stepped forward. "Now," she said softly, "watch." She knelt beside one of the rifles, not even her own, just one from the rack. Her hands moved slowly, calmly. No tension, no rush. The wind tore at her hair. Dust hit her face. She didn't flinch. Priya crouched beside her, reading the air like scripture. 5.2 left crosswind, rising to 7 past the 1,000 mark. Mirage inversion after 15 seconds. Olivia nodded once. "Got it." The rifle cracked. "Hit," Ramirez called. "Target 1 center." She adjusted, almost imperceptibly. Target 2 hit. Target 3 hit. By the time she reached the 6th target, the wind had shifted again, but she was already compensating. Target 6 hit, all 6 confirmed. Silence. Only the wind spoke. The reaction wasn't loud, not anymore. The SEALs were learning. They weren't laughing or muttering, they were listening. Watching her hands, her breathing, her posture. Stone stepped closer. "What are you reading?" he asked. Olivia looked at the horizon, her voice calm but thoughtful. "Patterns, nature loves them. Even chaos hides rhythm if you wait long enough. The mistake most shooters make is assuming they control the shot. They don't. They only negotiate with it." Negotiate. Every bullet is a conversation between you and the world. You just have to decide who speaks first. Stone stood in silence for a moment, letting that sink in. Then he nodded. Then I've been doing a lot of talking and not much listening. Priya smirked. That's a common problem, Commander, especially among leaders. He took the jab with grace this time. Fair. By midday, the wind hit 40 miles per hour in gusts. The range flags twisted into knots. Visibility dropped. Olivia called a break, but none of them moved for food. They were obsessed now, drawn in. Washington stayed behind, adjusting his scope again and again, eyes narrowing. He fired, missed, recalculated. After his fourth attempt, he finally hit. He didn't cheer. He just nodded to himself, quiet, proud. Olivia noticed. What changed? She asked. I stopped trying to predict the wind, he said. Started predicting myself. Olivia's mouth curved slightly. That's the moment every sniper grows up. By afternoon, they ran the drill again. This time, the results were different. 14 confirmed hits at range. 18 at mid-distance. Even Hayes managed a solid 4 out of 6, and didn't look like he hated admitting it. Progress, real progress. When they regrouped under the canopy, the sun was brutal, the kind of heat that burns even through shade. Sweat dripped from foreheads. Nobody complained. Priya set down her notebook. You just learned your first battlefield constant, she said. No matter how skilled you are, the environment decides who lives. Stone leaned forward, and the second constant. Priya looked at Olivia. Olivia met her eyes for a beat, then said quietly, the second constant is humility. The second you lose it, you start dying in small pieces. Her tone wasn't dramatic, just true. The kind of truth that settles deep and doesn't leave. Later, after dismissal, Olivia stayed behind at the far end of the range. The sun was sinking low, the wind dying down to a whisper. She pulled her rifle close, aligned her sights but didn't fire. She just breathed long, slow breaths. Priya walked up behind her, silent as always. You could have ended the day 2 hours earlier, she said. They were already convinced. Olivia didn't look up. Convincing them isn't the point. Then what is? Rebuilding them. Priya sat beside her, arms resting on her knees. You think they're broken? Olivia exhaled. Not broken, just blind. They've spent years being told they're the best. No one ever told them how fragile the best can be. Priya looked out toward the empty field. The targets glimmered faintly in the orange light. You still think they'll be ready? Olivia smiled faintly. Readiness isn't a switch. It's a surrender. When they stop fighting the lesson, that's when they'll be ready. That night the range was quiet. Too quiet. At 2300 hours, Olivia woke to a strange sound, a faint metallic clang from outside her quarters. She was on her feet instantly, moving like muscle memory, hand to sidearm, breathe steady. She stepped out into the darkness, the air cool, dry, full of desert silence. 2 figures moved near the range. She recognized them by their silhouettes. Hayes and Sutherland. They were setting up targets. In the middle of the night, Olivia holstered her weapon and approached. You two planning to start a night war without telling me? Hayes startled, spinning around. Ma'am, Sutherland laughed quietly. Couldn't sleep, he admitted. Figured we'd get some extra practice. Extra practice? Olivia asked. With zero illumination and wind shifts every 30 seconds. Hayes shrugged. Thought maybe the chaos thing works at night too. Olivia's lips twitched. Then let's find out. For the next 2 hours, they trained under the moonlight. No lights, no scopes, just silhouettes, sound, and instinct. Every shot was guesswork, but every miss taught more than a hit ever could. Sutherland started to find rhythm again, firing between gusts instead of against them. Hayes struggled, then found calm after Olivia whispered a simple phrase. Stop aiming, start listening. He did. And when he fired again, the bullet struck true. He looked up, eyes wide, almost disbelieving. How did you know that would work? Olivia smiled faintly. Because you were fighting yourself harder than the wind. Hayes lowered the rifle. For the first time since training began, he didn't argue. He just nodded. By dawn, the desert glowed gold and silent. They sat on the edge of the platform, rifles laid aside, watching the horizon bleed light over the dunes. Sutherland broke the silence. "Ma'am, can I ask something personal?" Olivia hesitated. "Depends what kind of personal." "You and Desai," he said. "You ever lose anyone, on a mission, I mean?" Olivia's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. "Everyone loses someone," she said softly, "but some losses don't end when the mission does." He nodded slowly. "I figured as much." Priya appeared behind them, coffee mug in hand. "You're talking about Ghost 3 again, aren't you?" Olivia didn't answer. She didn't need to. Hayes frowned. "Who's Ghost 3? Priya looked at him. "Our spotter," she said quietly, "the one who never came home." A long silence followed. Even the wind seemed to hold still. Olivia spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "She taught us everything we know about patience, about watching, about the space between heartbeats. She saved our lives more times than I can count. But one night she missed something, a shadow in the glass, a breath too slow." She stopped, took a breath. "When we found her, she was still holding her rifle, finger on the trigger, like she never left the fight." Sutherland looked down. Hayes swallowed hard. Neither spoke. Priya's voice softened. "That's why we train like this. Not to shoot better, but to live longer. Every bullet you fire carries someone's memory with it. The question is whether you honor it or waste it." The sun rose higher, cutting gold through the dust. The others began arriving, yawning, unaware of the lesson that had just unfolded before dawn. But Stone noticed. He always did. He saw the way Hayes stood taller, the way Sutherland listened instead of boasting, the quiet understanding in their eyes. Something was changing in his unit. Something deeper than skill. At the next morning briefing, Olivia laid out a new directive. The next phase of training wouldn't be on the range. It would be in the field. 2 days live simulation. Unknown terrain, unknown variables. Every comfort stripped away. Stone glanced at her, understanding instantly. "You're going to break them, aren't you?" Olivia looked at him. "No, I'm going to rebuild them from the inside out." And as the wind picked up again across the barren field, a quiet sense of anticipation filled the air. The 20 SEALs who had laughed on day one now stood ready, not with arrogance, but with hunger. They didn't know what waited for them beyond the perimeter. But for the first time, they weren't afraid of not knowing. They were ready to be tested, ready to be humbled, ready to see who they really were when the world turned against them. And somewhere behind her calm gray eyes, Olivia Brennan smiled faintly, not in pride, but in purpose. Because sometimes the real war isn't out there. It's inside the people who think they've already won. The desert didn't care who you were. Rank, reputation, experience, none of it mattered out here. By the time the sun reached its brutal zenith, the landscape had stripped every illusion of control away. The 48-hour exercise began without ceremony. No speeches, no countdown, just a simple instruction from Olivia Brennan, spoken calmly before dawn. "You have 48 hours to reach extraction point Bravo 15 miles east. You'll move in teams of 4, minimal gear, no electronics, no GPS. Your mission is to identify, locate, and neutralize 3 hidden targets, simulated hostiles. You'll be observed. You won't know when or how." She let the words sink in. The men shifted uneasily. Priya stood beside her, scanning faces. The SEALs were trying to look composed, but she could see it, the flicker of uncertainty, the thought of going blind. Stone exhaled through his nose. You really cut the leash off this one. Olivia looked at him. Leashes teach obedience, Commander. We're teaching instinct. He didn't argue. He just adjusted his rifle strap and nodded. By 600 hours, they were moving. The first hour was fine, cool air, crisp horizon, morning light stretching long across the sand. The teams split, following separate vectors east. Olivia and Priya shadowed them from a distance, moving fast, light, silent. They weren't participating, they were watching. Evaluating. Every decision, every hesitation, every failure of confidence. It wasn't a competition. It was revelation. Team 1 Stone's group advanced smoothly at first. His leadership held them steady. They read terrain well, used elevation, watched the wind. But by noon, fatigue started to whisper. The sun scorched overhead. The thermals blurred the horizon into liquid heat. No shade, no mercy. Sutherland checked his map, old school, laminated. He frowned. We're off by 2 clicks. Wind drift must have pushed our markers. Stone shaded his eyes, scanning the endless expanse. Recalibrate using terrain features. Nothing but dunes and rock, Sutherland muttered. All looks the same. Stone didn't answer. He knew the feeling, that creeping disorientation that turned strong men into ghosts. He crouched, touching the ground. The sand was shifting east, a consistent wind. If the drift was constant, their true position had to be south by. He stopped. Something glinted on the horizon. Glass, he said quietly. High ridge could be one of their targets. Sutherland followed his gaze. You think they'd make it that obvious? Stone's mouth twitched. They want us to think it's obvious. He raised his scope. The glare was too strong, distortion everywhere. No definition. He cursed under his breath. The wind shifted again. Dust rolled over them like a wave. Meanwhile, Team 2, Hayes' group, wasn't faring much better. They'd gone too fast, burned through hydration early, and were now huddled behind a jagged outcrop trying to regroup. Hayes sat with his back against the stone, sweat running into his eyes. This is ridiculous, he muttered. We're supposed to find ghost targets in a damn mirage. Brooks looked at him calmly. You're supposed to find patterns. You keep chasing mirages because you're looking for the target instead of for the terrain. Hayes shot him a glare. You read that off Brennan's notes. No, Brooks said simply. I watched her work yesterday. Before Hayes could reply, a faint thunk echoed in the distance, followed by a puff of orange smoke rising from the east. Contact, Brooks said immediately. Hayes squinted. You think that's them? Only one way to know. He raised his rifle. Rain. Brooks didn't answer. He just watched the dust move left to right, then down, then nothing. He adjusted his scope by instinct. 800 yards, he said. Hayes scoffed. No way, mirage is too thick. Brooks fired. A single metallic ping answered from the distance. Hayes' mouth fell open. You hit it. Brooks smiled faintly. No, she hit it, I just learned how. Across the valley, Olivia and Priya were lying prone behind a ridge, watching through binoculars. That one's learning, Priya murmured. Brooks, Olivia said. He's adapting faster than the rest. He's quiet, observes before acting. And Hayes? Olivia sighed softly, still fighting himself. Priya glanced at her. Remind you of anyone? Olivia didn't answer. She didn't have to. By nightfall, exhaustion had begun to fracture discipline. The heat vanished, replaced by a biting cold. The desert was a different creature now, one that stalked rather than screamed. Team 1 made camp near a dry creek bed. Stone rationed water, ordered 2-hour watch rotations. Team 2, still behind schedule, decided to push through the night, a decision that would cost them. Hayes stumbled more than once on the uneven terrain. His rifle scraped rock. Slow down, Brooks hissed. We're losing visual range. Can't stop now, Hayes muttered. We'll miss the checkpoint. Better to be late than lost. But Hayes didn't hear him. He was already chasing the next silhouette. That's when the first test came. A sudden flash, faint, distant, followed by the sound of compressed air. A simulated round whizzed past them, embedding into the sand. Hit indicator blinked red on Hayes' vest. He froze. Tagged, Brooks said calmly, "You're out." Hayes looked down at the blinking light, disbelief written across his face. "No, that's not possible. I didn't see anyone." "That's the point," Brooks said. They turned toward the sound, a faint echo in the distance. A figure moved on the ridge, backlit by moonlight, just for a second. Then gone. Olivia. Hayes swallowed hard, realization hitting him like a bullet. She was testing them, not from afar but in person. Meanwhile, Stone's group was about to learn their own lesson. At 200 hours, a sudden gust sent their wind indicators spinning. Sutherland sat up from his post, frowning. "Wind shift," he whispered, "coming from north now." Stone nodded. "Wake the others, we move." They packed fast, but as they started moving, something caught Stone's eye, a flicker of light against a distant dune. It was faint but deliberate. "Signal?" Sutherland asked. Stone shook his head. "No, that's—" Before he could finish, two muffled pops echoed from somewhere behind them. Their hit indicators lit red, one after another. They dove for cover, but it was too late. "Contact rear," Sutherland shouted. Nothing but silence answered. No muzzle flash, no sound, just the wind. Stone's mind raced. He scanned the ridges. Nothing. Then from his left a whisper of fabric, the soft crunch of sand. He spun, just in time to catch a blur of movement disappearing behind a dune. Olivia again. She circled them. Silently, precisely. He exhaled, half in disbelief, half in admiration. Sutherland cursed softly. "How the hell is she doing that? We set up 360 coverage." Stone smiled faintly. "You covered lines of fire, she covered lines of sound." Sutherland blinked. "What?" "She moves when the wind moves, fires when the gust breaks the noise. That's how she vanished on us." He looked back at the red lights blinking on his men's vests and shook his head. "We never stood a chance." By dawn, every team had been hit at least once. The SEALs were exhausted, physically and emotionally. The sun came up like fire, painting the sand in gold and blood. When they regrouped at the base camp, Olivia stood waiting, expression unreadable. Priya was beside her, arms crossed. Stone approached first, dust-caked, dehydrated but composed. "Exercise complete," he said simply. Olivia nodded. "Report." 22 simulated engagements, 6 confirmed hits, 13 losses. Survivors? 7. Olivia's eyes moved across the group. The men looked beaten, not by defeat but by realization. "You were being tested on two things," she said quietly. "Observation and control, not of your environment, of yourselves." Hayes looked up, voice hoarse. "We failed both." Olivia stepped closer. "No, you learned both. Failure is the tuition of mastery." She glanced at Priya, who nodded slightly. Then Olivia continued. "You all made the same mistake. You thought survival was about endurance. It's not. It's about awareness. Most of you fired when you were afraid. You moved when you were uncertain. And you hesitated when you should have trusted your senses." Stone's voice was low. "And you were the test." Olivia met his eyes. "We were the environment." For a moment no one spoke. Then Sutherland asked quietly, "How'd you stay invisible out there? We scanned every ridge." Olivia hesitated, then said softly, "Because I've spent years learning how to disappear. Sometimes, survival means being unseen, not because you're weak, but because the world isn't ready for you yet." Her tone wasn't prideful. It was mournful. Later that evening, after debrief, Priya sat outside the hangar, watching the sun sink behind the dunes. Olivia joined her, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "They're changing," Priya said. "They're adapting," Olivia corrected. "Change can fade, adaptation doesn't." Priya sipped her coffee, eyes narrowing. "You saw Hayes out there, didn't you? You hit him yourself." "I did. On purpose." "Yes, he needed to fail." Priya nodded slowly. "He reminds you of someone." Olivia didn't answer immediately. The wind picked up, whispering against the metal siding. "Ghost 3, she said finally. She used to push herself the same way, couldn't accept limits, thought grit was enough. Priya's voice softened. "It was." "No," Olivia said quietly, "it was." They sat in silence for a while, 2 shadows against a dying light. Finally, Priya spoke again. "You think they're ready for the next phase?" Olivia smiled faintly. "No, but readiness isn't the goal, awareness is." Inside the barracks, the SEALs were quiet. No bravado, no noise. Hayes lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The words kept replaying in his head: survival isn't endurance, it's awareness. For the first time, he understood what she meant. Stone, in his office, wrote a note in his field log. "There's strength in silence. I used to think command was about speaking first. It's not. It's about knowing when not to." Outside, the desert wind carried the faint echo of laughter. Olivia and Priya, sharing one of the rare moments they still allowed themselves. Tomorrow would bring a new challenge. Urban simulation, split teams, real pressure. And though the sun had long vanished behind the hills, its ghost still lingered on the horizon, glowing faintly, like memory refusing to fade. Because in war and in training, the hardest truth was always the same. You don't conquer the environment. You learn to listen to it until it teaches you who you really are. The city was dead. Not a real city, a mock-up. A maze of abandoned structures inside the old Fort Crescent urban warfare compound, built decades ago to mimic chaos. Broken windows, rusted doors, crumbling rooftops scorched by sun and time. For 2 days, the SEALs had been fighting nature. Now they'd fight ghosts, theirs and hers. At 500 hours, Olivia Brennan stood on the catwalk above the central square, looking down at the grid of streets below. The compound stretched nearly a mile across, an empty labyrinth of dust, echoes, and memories. Priya stood beside her, clipboard in hand. All teams ready, comms off, no night vision, no thermal. Olivia nodded. "Good, they'll rely on sound and instinct." Priya hesitated. "You sure about this phase? It's close quarters. Things get personal fast." Olivia's voice stayed calm. "They need to learn that precision doesn't end at distance. Up close, every heartbeat matters." Priya studied her for a moment, then asked quietly, "And you? Are you ready?" Olivia didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed fixed on the shattered skyline. "Readiness is a myth," she said softly. "You move when you have to, not when you're ready." The operation began at dawn. 4 SEAL teams entered from different quadrants, moving silent and low. Their mission: locate 3 hidden targets and extract a simulated hostage. Unknown to them, Olivia and Priya were already inside, unseen, unannounced, waiting. The rules were simple. If you got marked, you were out. If you panicked, you failed. If you fired without thinking, you regret it. Team Alpha, Stone, Washington, and 2 younger operators advanced down a narrow street lined with half-collapsed storefronts. Every step crunched glass, every breath echoed off concrete. "Stay low," Stone murmured. "No sound unless necessary." Washington scanned an upper window. Movement. He raised his hand, signaling halt. Stone crouched behind a burned-out car, eyes narrowing. A flicker of fabric. Then nothing. "Ghosts," Washington whispered. Stone didn't reply, his gut twisted. It was too quiet, too staged. He tapped his radio. No response, comms were jammed. Of course. He motioned forward. The team split, flanking the structure from both sides. Washington crept toward the doorway, weapon steady. He peeked inside. Empty room, dust swirling in sunlight. He turned to signal clear. Thunk. Something hit his vest, soft, almost gentle. A red flare blinked once, then died. He froze. Marked. He didn't even see her. From across the street, Stone saw it happen, a flicker of motion. A shadow in the window. He fired. The shot echoed down the alley, but the shadow was gone. Contact northwest, he called out. No response, his men had scattered. He scanned the rooftops, every instinct alive. Then a voice came from behind him, calm, even unmistakable. You're aiming too high, Commander. He spun, rifle up, but Olivia was already there, standing 5 feet away, weapon lowered. He froze. How? She cut him off. You followed the sound, not the silence. Silence, he echoed. She stepped closer. Sound, a lie. Silence is truth. The world always tells you where someone was. Silence tells you where they are. Then she was gone. Gone before he even blinked. He stood there, heart pounding, gun trembling slightly. For the first time in years, he realized what it felt like to be outmatched not by strength, but by stillness. Across the compound, Team Bravo wasn't faring better. Hayes led them through a series of corridors, walls tight, shadows long. Room clear, one of them whispered. Hayes nodded, move. They turned a corner and froze. A figure sat in the middle of the hallway, knees drawn up, rifle across her lap, face hidden by a hood. Don't move, Hayes ordered, hands where I can see them. No response. Target, one of the SEALs hissed. Hold, Hayes said. He moved forward slowly, rifle steady. Identify yourself. Still nothing. He reached for the hood. The figure vanished. A split-second blur, a crack of compressed air. 2 red lights blinked on their vests. Hayes fired instinctively, but hit only dust. Priya's voice drifted through the hall, soft and calm. You rely on sight too much, Hayes. The eyes lie before the hands do. He spun, scanning corners, frustrated. Show yourself. Why? Her voice came from behind him. Would you do anything different? He froze because she was right. By mid-morning, half the teams were marked out. Stone regrouped his remaining men in the central courtyard. Sweat streaked his face. He wasn't angry, just humbled. They're dismantling us piece by piece, Sutherland muttered. Stone nodded, that's the point. He looked up toward the catwalks. He knew she was watching. He could feel her. Let them come, he said quietly. We'll stop reacting, we'll listen. They waited. Minutes passed, then faint footsteps above. Roofline south building. Stone raised his hand. 2-man split, corner cover. He aimed not at the sound, but at the rhythm between sounds. A pause. A breath. He fired. Metal pinged. A red flare burst from the rooftop. Sutherland grinned. You tagged one. Stone smiled slightly. Didn't tag her, but I found her rhythm. Up on the roof, Olivia crouched behind a rusted vent, checking her vest, red blinking softly. She smiled. Well done, Commander, she murmured, finally listening. By late afternoon, the compound looked like a war zone. Walls peppered with paint rounds, doorways shattered, dust thick as fog. The SEALs had started to adapt, faster, sharper, more deliberate. Every move slower, every decision quieter. And for the first time, Olivia wasn't in control anymore. They were learning her language. At 1700 hours, the scenario ended. The siren blared once long low. All units freeze. When the dust cleared, 8 SEALs remained alive. Better than before, much better. Stone approached Olivia in the square. We held longer than expected. You evolved, she said simply. He smirked, or maybe we're just learning how you think. Her eyes softened. That's the first step to surviving someone like me. Someone like you, he asked. Olivia didn't answer. She was staring at a nearby window, the second floor of the old administrative building. For a moment she looked far away. Priya followed her gaze and froze. Liv, she whispered. Olivia's expression had gone still, too still. The wind carried faint echoes through the hallway. 3 windows, 1 broken. 1 shadow in the glass. Not real. Not possible. But Olivia's breath caught. She saw her. Ghost 3. Sitting just where she had the night she died. The world narrowed. The noise faded. Suddenly, Olivia wasn't in California anymore. She was back in Kandahar. Night sky burning orange. Smoke thick. Ghost 3's voice crackling in her ear. Target spotted, upper window hold position. She remembered the sound, the distant glass breaking, the half-second warning, the gunfire that tore through the wall before anyone could react. She remembered crawling through the dust, reaching her spotter, blood, sand, silence. Her friend's final breath caught in her throat like a prayer that never finished. And now she was staring at the same window, the same pattern of cracks in the glass. Her hands trembled. Liv, Priya said softly, it's not real. But Olivia's mind was already gone. Her rifle rose slowly. Her eyes locked on the window. Target reacquired, she whispered. Priya grabbed her shoulder. Liv, stop. The shout snapped her back. Reality hit like recoil. The window was empty. The shadow was gone. Her breathing came shallow. She lowered the rifle, eyes glassy. The courtyard was silent. Everyone was watching. Stone stepped forward, voice low. Captain. Olivia blinked hard. I'm fine. But she was. She walked off alone, ignoring Priya calling after her. Out past the walls. Out into the desert. The sun was falling, blood-red against the sand. She stopped halfway across the ridge, dropped to her knees, and exhaled a sound that wasn't quite a sob but close. Priya found her minutes later, standing there in the wind. No words, no judgment, just presence. You saw her again, Priya said. Olivia nodded. Same window, same angle, same silence. Priya was quiet for a long time. Then she said softly, you know what she'd say if she saw you like this. Olivia smiled faintly through tears. Tell me to take the shot. Priya smirked sadly. Yeah, she would. They stood there until the sun disappeared completely. 2 soldiers holding the ghosts that never stopped following them. When they returned to base, the SEALs were silent. They'd seen something in Olivia's face they hadn't seen before, vulnerability. The kind that made her human. Stone approached quietly. You don't have to debrief tonight, he said. Olivia looked at him, expression unreadable. Yes, I do. That's what leadership means, showing up when you'd rather disappear. She walked into the briefing room. 20 men followed. No one spoke. She stood at the front, face pale but composed. Today, she said, you learned the hardest truth of this profession. Combat doesn't just break bodies, it breaks memory. It brings back things you thought you buried. Her voice softened. Precision isn't about control, it's about peace. The quieter you become inside, the clearer your world gets outside. That's the real skill. Stone's gaze met hers. For once there was no rank between them, just respect. When she finished, no one clapped. No one needed to. The silence said everything. That night, Olivia sat alone in her quarters. staring at the desert through the small window. The wind brushed against the glass, soft, rhythmic. In the reflection, for a brief second, she thought she saw Ghost 3 again, smiling. But this time, there was no fear. Just warmth. Priya's voice came from the doorway. "You okay?" Olivia turned, nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I finally am." Priya smiled. "Good, because tomorrow we show them what comes after silence." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" Priya's grin deepened. "Purpose." Outside, the base lights flickered. The desert wind whispered through the empty range, carrying the ghosts away. Tomorrow would be about redemption. For them. For her. For all the voices that never made it home. And as Olivia closed her eyes, one thought lingered, soft, steady, and sure. Sometimes healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from learning how to aim again. The desert was gone. Now it was mountains, cold, steep, silent. A new phase, a new test. One that would measure not just precision, but character. At 500 hours, the briefing room was dim, the air thick with anticipation. 20 men sat in silence. Olivia Brennan stood at the front, her posture calm, voice steady. "This is the final phase," she said. "Operation Night Rescue. You'll be working in full teams, with live gear and simulated hostiles. One civilian asset is trapped in hostile territory. You'll have 12 hours to locate, infiltrate, and extract." She paused. Her tone changed, softer, more deliberate. "This simulation is based on a real event, a mission that went wrong. Every mistake that was made that night is part of this exercise. You will walk through my failure, and maybe, if you're lucky, correct it." A ripple of quiet moved through the room. No one spoke. No one dared. Commander Stone's jaw tightened. "You mean this is your Kandahar op?" Olivia nodded once, "The one that cost us Ghost 3. Even Priya looked at her, surprised. She hadn't known she would share it. "This mission broke us," Olivia said. "But if you understand why, it might save you one day." She turned toward the map projected on the wall, rugged terrain, narrow valleys, a small compound tucked into a gorge. 2 entry points, 1 extraction zone, 0 margin for error. Her eyes swept the room. "You'll have no comms and no drones, only what you can see, hear, and decide." Someone whispered, "So just us?" Olivia nodded, "Just you, like it was for me." At dawn, they deployed into the mountains. The air was thin, every breath stung. The jagged ridges rose like broken teeth against a pale sky. Stone's team took the northern ridge. Hayes' team the south valley. Olivia and Priya followed, observers, shadows unseen. For the first time, the SEALs moved like a unit forged, not formed. Every motion efficient, every decision quiet. They weren't chasing ghosts anymore. They were chasing understanding. By midday, they reached the canyon mouth. It looked almost identical to the Kandahar site, crumbling walls, an old mining station converted into a safe house. Olivia's pulse quickened. She'd memorized this terrain years ago. Every rock, every window, every death. Priya noticed her silence. "You don't have to relive this," she said softly. "I already am." They watched from high ground as the SEALs began their approach. Stone led the assault team, moving slow, deliberate. Brooks handled overwatch, perched high on the ridge with a suppressed rifle. Washington coordinated movement signals, quiet hand gestures, clean formation. It was flawless. Exactly the way her team had done it, before everything fell apart. Inside the canyon, the SEALs advanced through the skeletal remains of what once had been machinery and rusted barrels. Hayes whispered into his mic, even though he knew comms were dead. "Visual on compound door, no movement." Stone replied with hand signals, 2-man stack, breach on silent. They moved in. Slow, controlled. The door creaked open too easily. Inside, darkness. Cold. Still air. Washington swept left, rifle tight. Hayes went right. Sutherland covered rear. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then a flicker of shadow near the far wall. Hayes reacted first. Contact. Pop. His vest blinked red. He froze mid-word. Then 3 more lights flared across the room, red after red after red. From the rafters above, a figure dropped silently, rolled, turned, and aimed. Olivia. Even though they were expecting her, it didn't matter. She moved like instinct, like wind. Controlled chaos. Simulation terminated. Ramirez's voice echoed distantly through the speakers. Hayes ripped off his headset, breathing hard. You were waiting for us. Olivia lowered her weapon. No, I was waiting for mistakes. He frowned. We cleared that room perfectly. She stepped closer. Perfectly, but too fast. You didn't listen before entering. You didn't let the silence tell you who was inside. Hayes opened his mouth to argue, but stopped. Because she was right. Again. They reset. Ran the scenario again. This time slower, more careful. Every corner checked. Every sound analyzed. And when they reached the same room, the difference showed. Stone stopped the team mid-step, raised a hand. Hold, there's a pulse in the air. Olivia smiled faintly from her perch. He'd learned. Stone whispered, we're not alone. He adjusted their entry, split the angles. They breached clean. No casualties. For the first time, they reached the hostage. A dummy, dressed in desert fatigues. But something about it made Olivia's chest tighten. It was the same position her spotter had been found in that night. The same head tilt, the same broken calm. She turned away, jaw clenched. Later, when the SEALs regrouped at the extraction point, the light was fading. The mission had succeeded tactically. But emotionally, the field was heavy. Olivia stood apart, eyes fixed on the horizon. Stone approached quietly. You good, Captain? She didn't turn. Good enough. You said this was based on your real op. What really happened that night? Olivia hesitated, then slowly she spoke. We went in under false intel. They told us the building was clear, 1 hostile, maybe 2. It was 12. They knew we were coming. She paused, her voice dropped to a whisper. My spotter, Ghost 3, she saw something wrong before we breached. She tried to stop me, but I was command. I told her we had to move. Her throat tightened. She followed orders. And died following them. Stone stayed silent. He didn't offer sympathy, just presence. She saved my life, Olivia continued. Took the round meant for me. I never even saw the shooter. She looked at him, eyes burning now. You want to know the worst part? Stone shook his head slowly. I think I already do. Olivia exhaled. I never fired back, not once. I froze. The sniper in me died that night. The wind carried her words away, but their weight stayed. Stone said quietly, maybe she didn't die for you to stop shooting. Maybe she died for you to teach others how not to. Olivia stared at him, and for the first time she didn't have an answer. That night the mountain base was quiet again. No laughter, no bravado. Just the sound of men thinking. In the mess hall, Hayes sat alone, replaying the mission in his head. Every mistake, every lesson, every breath she taught him to control. Brooks joined him. You did good. Hayes shrugged. Good doesn't bring people back. Brooks nodded. No, but it keeps you from losing more. Across the hall, Priya and Stone watched Olivia from a distance. She was standing near the window, staring at the peaks lit by moonlight. She carries that night like a wound, Stone murmured. Priya sipped her coffee. She carries it like a promise. Stone turned, promise. She swore no one under her command would ever die from blindness again. That's why she pushes so hard. Stone nodded slowly. And you, why do you stay with her? Priya smiled faintly, because she still believes people can change, even when I don't. At 200 hours, Olivia couldn't sleep. She stepped outside. The mountains were bathed in silver light. Cold air wrapped around her like forgiveness she didn't deserve. She walked down to the shooting platform. Her rifle was already there, as if waiting. She lay prone, aligned her sights, and stared at a target pinned against the cliff. 1 kilometer, maybe more. Her breath trembled. She whispered under her breath for her. And fired. The bullet traveled in silence. Then a clean metallic ring echoed through the canyon. Hit. Center mass. Her hands shook. Not from fear. From release. Priya appeared behind her, drawn by the sound. You finally took the shot. Olivia nodded. After all this time. Priya smiled softly, and it didn't bring her back. Priya crouched beside her. It wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to bring you back. Olivia looked at her friend, eyes wet, then at the distant target gleaming under moonlight. For the first time in years, she didn't feel haunted. Just whole. The next morning at the final debrief, the mood was different. Calmer, wiser, lighter. Stone stood to speak first. You taught us to hear silence, to feel wind, to move when we stop thinking we control it, but more than that, you taught us humility. He looked at his team, proud, exhausted, changed. We came here to prove we were the best. We're leaving here knowing what that actually means. Olivia met his eyes. And what does it mean, Commander? He smiled faintly. It means you never stop learning, and you never stop listening, especially to the people you underestimate. A few quiet chuckles rippled through the room. Even Olivia smiled. Then Priya added, mission complete. But Olivia corrected her quietly, no. Mission understood. That evening they gathered on the ridge, SEALs, officers, instructors. No ranks, no uniforms, just people. The sun dipped low, gold spilling over the horizon. Stone raised a canteen in silent salute. To Ghost 3, he said softly. Olivia nodded, and to everyone who learned from her. They drank in silence, the kind that meant something now. Not emptiness, but reverence. As night settled, Priya turned to her. What now, Captain? Olivia looked at the fading light. We go back, she said. Keep teaching, keep listening, keep making sure the ones who follow never forget what silence can say. Priya smiled, still haunted. Olivia shook her head. No, just humbled. They stood together, wind curling around them like memory. In the distance, the targets gleamed faintly in the moonlight, untouched, waiting for new stories. And the narrator's voice, low, reflective, almost poetic, carried through the final shot. Some wounds don't close because they're not meant to. They stay open, to remind us that survival isn't victory. It's awareness. It's humility. It's hearing the silence. And knowing when to fire again. War never sends invitations. It just arrives unannounced, unkind, and always too soon. It had been 6 weeks since Fort Crescent. 6 quiet, fleeting weeks of calm. The SEALs had returned to their commands. Olivia and Priya had been reassigned to Joint Task Force Orion, an experimental cross-branch operations group under JSOC. They were supposed to advise, not deploy. Supposed to rest. But soldiers like them never really rest. They just wait for the next call. It came at 300 hours. A secure line. A single voice. Colonel Kirkland. Brennan, Desai, we've got a situation. By 700 hours, they were airborne, gray light bleeding across the Pacific horizon. Kirkland briefed them mid-flight. his face drawn tight, eyes hard. Intel came in from the Philippine coast, a joint naval unit ambushed. 12 missing. Communications blackout. We believe it's a high-tech insurgent group operating out of the jungle interior. Satellite feeds jammed. Drones are blind. We're sending a small recovery unit, 5 Navy SEALs, 2 Army advisors. You're the advisors. Olivia's stomach turned. Which SEALs? Kirkland's answer was a quiet grenade. Stone, Sutherland, Washington, Brooks, Hayes. For a moment, no one spoke. The aircraft hummed in the silence. Priya broke it first. So we're reuniting the class. Kirkland nodded. Let's hope the lesson stuck. They landed at a remote airstrip on the island of Samar. Heat thick, air damp, insects buzzing like static. The SEALs were already there, armed and prepped, expressions unreadable. Stone approached first, extending a hand. Didn't think we'd be seeing you again so soon. Olivia shook his hand. Didn't think you'd want to. He smirked. I didn't. Then I remembered what happened the last time I underestimated you. Priya grinned. Smart man. Washington handed Olivia a data slate. Last known ping from the missing unit 30 miles inland near Mount Libonon. Dense terrain. No drone access. Visual recon, Olivia asked. None, Stone replied. We're blind again. Olivia nodded. Then we do it the old way. Hayes glanced at her, half grinning, listening to the silence. Olivia smiled faintly. Always. By nightfall, they were deep in jungle. Thick canopy, no stars. Every sound felt amplified. Branches creaking, water dripping, insects whispering secrets. They moved in tight formation, Olivia and Stone leading, Priya handling navigation, the rest fanning out in silence. Every few minutes, Olivia stopped, head tilted, listening. Her hand would rise in slow warning, and the team would freeze. Hayes whispered once, "You hear something." She didn't answer. She just waited. Then in the distance, a faint metallic click. Too clean to be nature. Tripwire, she said softly. Sutherland found it seconds later, half buried, expertly camouflaged. He exhaled. You saved us. Olivia shook her head. The jungle saved you. It warned you. You just needed to listen. Hours passed. The night pressed down heavy. By 200, they reached a clearing, the smell of diesel and metal thick in the air. Washington raised his thermal scope, but it fuzzed and glitched. Jamming, he muttered, powerful too. Priya crouched beside a fallen tree, scanning the ground. Footprints, at least 10 boots, not locals. Stone leaned closer. Direction. East, she said, but heavy drag marks too, could be bodies or gear. Olivia looked toward the dark ridge ahead. Then that's where they went. Stone checked his watch. We move in pairs. You and Desai on overwatch will breach the perimeter. Olivia nodded. Copy that, but if you see heat signatures, assume civilians, they take hostages. Hayes frowned. You sound like you've been here before. Olivia's eyes hardened. I have. They split. Stone's team moved through the brush, low and deliberate. Olivia and Priya climbed higher, finding vantage along a cliff edge overlooking the valley. From there, they saw it, faint light leaking from beneath jungle canopy. A makeshift camp. Tin roofs, camouflage netting, solar generators. Dozens of hostiles. Priya adjusted her scope, her voice quiet. They're organized, military discipline. Look at the formations. Mercenaries, Olivia murmured. Ex-special forces bought loyalty. Below, Stone and his men were closing in, ghosts in the foliage. Then something flickered in Olivia's periphery, a lens glint, high on the opposite ridge. Her pulse spiked. Counter-sniper, she whispered. Priya froze. Where? Olivia's voice dropped to instinct. 1 o'clock, Elevation 12 meters, he's already scanning. Without thinking, Olivia lined her sights. Priya whispered, "That's over 800 meters, Liv. You're." "I know." She exhaled slow. Time bent. Sound collapsed. She fired. The jungle absorbed the shot. A single flash, then silence. Priya checked her scope, target down. Olivia's hands trembled faintly. He had overwatch on the hostages, if he fired first. Priya placed a hand on her shoulder. "He didn't because you did." Down below, Stone's team breached the perimeter quick, clean, efficient. They cleared 2 tents, secured the generator shack, and found the missing personnel bound but alive. Washington radioed through the comm pack. "Package secured, minimal resistance." Olivia smiled faintly. "Copy that, extraction route North Ridge, we'll cover from here." For a moment, everything was working. Too well. Then the world exploded. The first blast hit from the east, concussive, deafening. A mine. Stone was thrown sideways, dust and shrapnel tearing the air. "Ambush," he shouted, dragging Washington behind cover. Automatic fire erupted from the tree line, disciplined, overlapping arcs. Not random, not panicked. Professional. Olivia's heart seized. They knew we were here. Priya scanned the ridge. There are 4 gunners suppressing the north route. Olivia's voice hardened. "We're not losing anyone, not again." She adjusted her scope, fired once, clean hit. Second. Third. Each shot carved a hole in the chaos. Priya spotted movement near the captured SEALs. "We've got 2 down, Sutherland's hit." Olivia's breathing quickened. "No visual on Stone." "Negative." She fired again, the last magazine, the last chance. Then through the scope she saw him, Stone, dragging Sutherland toward cover, one arm bleeding, refusing to stop. Olivia keyed the mic. "Stone, flank west, follow the smoke." Static. Then his voice, broken but steady. "Copy, moving." They fought for 20 minutes that felt like years. Every round, every breath, every second pulled from training and instinct. Finally silence fell again, but this time it was earned. The enemy melted back into jungle. The SEALs regrouped, battered but alive. Priya checked her watch. Extraction in 6 minutes. Olivia nodded, still scanning the ridge. "Not yet, they'll try one more." A flash. Not ahead, behind. Olivia spun, too late. A sniper. Close, hidden. The shot rang out, snapping through the air. Priya fell. "Priya!" Olivia dropped beside her. Blood, left shoulder, not lethal but bad. Priya gasped. "It's fine, just grazed." Olivia's vision tunneled. Everything narrowed to the tree line, where the muzzle flash had come from. She crawled to her rifle. Her mind went quiet, the way it always did when she crossed that thin line between thought and instinct. "Come on," she whispered. She waited. Listened. A faint click. There. She fired. The recoil hit like relief. And then silence. Real silence. Priya exhaled, eyes closing. "You always did have perfect timing." Olivia smiled weakly. "You always pick dramatic moments to test me." Extraction arrived 20 minutes later. Dust, noise, the beating heart of rotors cutting through fading light. Stone limped aboard first, carrying Sutherland. Hayes and Washington followed with the rescued hostages. Olivia and Priya climbed in last, covered in mud and blood. The medics moved fast, checking wounds, counting heads. Everyone alive. Everyone. Stone caught Olivia's eye from across the cabin. He nodded once, no words, just a quiet salute. She returned it. The noise of the rotors drowned everything else, but inside that aircraft, something unspoken moved through them all, A shared silence, familiar now. The kind that said, we made it, not because we were perfect but because we listened. Back at base, under dim fluorescent lights, the debrief was short. Kirkland read the report twice, jaw tight. 12 rescued, 0 KIA, 1 wounded, enemy force neutralized. He looked up. That's not luck. Olivia shook her head. No, that's awareness. Priya smiled faintly, her shoulder bandaged, and a little bit of revenge. Kirkland leaned back. You just proved something, Captain. Your methods work in real combat. JSOC's considering full integration. Stone spoke from the side of the room. They don't just work, they save lives. Kirkland nodded. Then it's decided. Operation Silent Eye becomes doctrine. Later, as the others left, Olivia lingered alone in the hangar. The moon hung low over the tarmac, painting silver lines across her rifle case. Priya joined her quietly. Ghost 3 would have been proud, she said. Olivia smiled faintly. Maybe she finally got some rest tonight. Priya nodded. You think you did? Olivia looked at the horizon. For the first time, maybe. She turned toward the rows of aircraft lined in silence, machines built for war, resting now under peaceful skies. Funny thing, she murmured. We came here to teach them, but I think they taught us too. Priya tilted her head. What? How to stop surviving and start living. The narrator's voice, calm, slow, reverent, filled the space around her. Sometimes the battlefield isn't a place, it's a memory. And victory isn't about who shoots first, it's about who learns to listen after the last shot. The medals gleamed under the white light of the press hall. Rows of uniforms, flashes from cameras, the smell of polished brass and new carpet. For the first time in years, Olivia Brennan felt exposed not from danger, but from recognition. Joint Task Force Orion had become an overnight legend. 20 hostages rescued, 0 casualties. A mission no one expected to succeed, led, trained, and saved by 2 women who had once been called observers. The world wanted a story. Command wanted a headline. But Olivia wanted silence. She stood at the back of the stage as Colonel Kirkland addressed the crowd. These operators represent the best of us, he said, voice steady over the applause. They remind us that skill without humility is blindness. That sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones who save everyone else. Stone stood beside Olivia in his formal blues, posture perfect, jaw tight. He wasn't used to ceremony either. When the applause faded, Kirkland called her name. Captain Olivia Brennan, step forward. She did. Every step felt heavier than any mission she'd walked into. The medal, a silver star, hung from the colonel's hand. He leaned close enough for only her to hear. You earned this, whether you believe it or not. She nodded once, eyes steady. Thank you, sir. But her voice barely made a sound. The medal touched her chest. The cameras flashed. And in that split second, she thought of Ghost 3. Blood on sand, whispering, take the shot. After the ceremony, the crowd thinned. The journalists left. The hall fell quiet again. Stone approached her, still in uniform, still uncomfortable with the shine of rank. He smiled faintly. You look like you'd rather be under fire than under lights. Olivia smirked. At least gunfire's honest. He chuckled softly, then his expression sobered. I never thanked you for that night, Samar. You saved my team, you saved me. She shook her head. No, you saved yourself, I just reminded you how. He nodded, understanding. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled something small, a single bullet casing, polished clean. This was from the first shot you fired that day, he said. Found it near the ridge, figured you want it. Olivia took it slowly. It was warm from his hand, cool in hers. The faintest trace of jungle mud still clung to the groove. She looked at him, "Thank you, Commander." He shrugged, just keeping promises. "To who?" "To the woman who taught me to listen." She smiled, small, real. "That's a dangerous habit to keep." He grinned. "Maybe, but it saved my life more than once." Priya found her later outside the hangar, sitting on the hood of an armored Humvee, metal still hanging untouched around her neck. "You should be proud," Priya said. "I'm not built for proud." Priya leaned beside her. "Then what are you built for?" Olivia stared at the dark runway stretching out into the horizon. "Clarity, doing what's right even when no one's looking." Priya smiled faintly. "So same as always." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the hum of generators, the distant rumble of departing planes. Finally, Olivia said quietly, "They offered me a desk job, Doctrine Division, training oversight for Orion." Priya blinked. "And you said?" "I said no." Priya raised an eyebrow. "You, turning down a clean post and steady paycheck, you feeling okay?" Olivia laughed softly. "I'm not done teaching yet." The next morning, before sunrise, she was gone. No send-off, no fanfare. Just a quiet departure, a note left on Priya's bunk. "Don't follow, you'll find me when it matters." Weeks passed. Then months. Operation Silent Eye spread like wildfire through special operations schools. New doctrine. New methods. Whispers of the Brennan system, intuition-based marksmanship, silence tracking, emotional resilience. But Olivia herself had vanished. Some said she was consulting overseas. Others said she'd retired completely. Only Priya knew the truth because one night a letter arrived. No return address. Just a single line written in Olivia's precise, deliberate handwriting. "Teaching doesn't end in classrooms." Inside was a photograph, a small, remote village somewhere in Southeast Asia. Children learning to shoot cameras instead of rifles. Olivia standing among them, smiling. Back in the U.S., Task Force Orion continued to operate, with Stone now commanding. But everything felt different. Every briefing began with silence. Every mission ended with reflection. Not out of ritual but respect. Hayes still joked too much. Washington still wrote in his field notebook. Sutherland still cursed under stress. But all of them, all 20 men who once laughed at 2 women on a range, now carried a new kind of reverence. They didn't just shoot cleaner. They moved different. Slower, sharper. Aware. Sometimes Stone would catch himself hearing her voice in the back of his mind. Calm, low, patient. "Stop aiming, start listening." And every time he did, his shot found center. Priya, meanwhile, took Olivia's place at the Joint Operations Training Center. She built a program around their methods, calling it Project Whisper. Every new operator, regardless of branch or gender, spent the first week not shooting at all, just listening. At first they complained. By the end of training, they understood. During her lectures, she'd often pause mid-sentence, smile faintly and say, "Captain Brennan once told me something. That silence is the only teacher that doesn't lie." The cadets would laugh softly. They didn't realize how true it was. A year later, on a gray morning, a car arrived at the base gate. Priya stepped outside as the driver approached, a local courier, holding a small parcel. No sender. No markings. She opened it. Inside was a single spent rifle casing, tied to a strip of desert cloth, the same one Olivia had used to wrap her hand during the Samar mission. There was a note. Handwritten. 4 words. "Ghost 3 is at peace." Priya closed her eyes. The wind caught her hair, carrying the scent of rain and dust. She smiled through it, whispering, "Then so are we." That night, as the base quieted, Priya walked out to the range, the same place where it all began. The targets gleamed faintly in moonlight, untouched. She set one casing down on the ground, right where Olivia had fired her first shot all those months ago. And for a long time she just stood there, letting the silence fill everything. No gunfire. No orders. No ghosts. Just memory. She could almost hear Olivia's voice. Steady, gentle, certain. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Far away, somewhere beyond the borders of maps and missions, Olivia Brennan walked alone through a field of tall grass. The sun was rising behind her, golden and soft. In her hands, a camera. Around her, laughter. Children playing, their voices cutting through the morning air like music. For the first time, her shoulders weren't heavy. Her steps weren't cautious. She stopped, lifted the camera, and snapped a photo, light catching the edges of her smile. A shadow passed over her shoulder, a breeze maybe. Or something else. She turned slightly, as if listening. For a heartbeat, she thought she heard it. A familiar voice, faint and warm. Take the shot. Olivia smiled. I just did. She lowered the camera, letting the wind carry that moment away. Because some shots, she realized, don't wound. They capture. They heal. They end things that needed ending. The narrator's voice comes in, soft, cinematic, heavy with meaning. In the end, she didn't leave behind medals or records or headlines. She left a method, a mindset, a way of seeing. She proved that silence is stronger than noise. That stillness is braver than motion. And that sometimes the truest aim isn't at the enemy, but at the parts of ourselves we've been afraid to face. 2 female snipers stood against 20 men and changed them. But the real story wasn't about competition. It was about awareness, redemption, and grace under fire. Because in a world that glorifies loud victories, she taught us that the quiet ones are the most dangerous and the most human. The scene fades. Sound dissolves into silence. Then one final image. A spent casing lying in the sand, half buried by wind. A single line etched into its surface. Listen before you aim. The wind shifts. The casing rolls once, and the screen fades to black.